Welcome to the first of my E3 coverage videos. This time we will be going over the EA conference, which finished a couple hours ago. Taking some time to watch the conference, look it over, and form an opinion on it. So they started out the conference with this weird hologram thing. That's kind of cool from a technical standpoint, but probably was just a waste of money on their part. Because, they were doing it to hype up Anthem. But I don't think they really need to hype up Anthem so much. They showed it off in a pretty big way last E3. So probably everybody who's interested in it's already interested in it. And everybody who isn't going to be impressed by a hologram. But, they just wanted to show off and throw money at the wall and see what sticks, so it was cool, I guess. I don't know how they did it. Some sort of techno-wizardry, but they somehow created a hologram that was captured by the camera pretty decently. I assume it's a hologram. If it wasn't a hologram, everyone else in the room who was actually there in person didn't see the effect, and it was only overlaid over their video stream, which would have been really awkward for everybody in the room. So I'm just kind of giving them benefit of the doubt that it was actually a hologram that was three-dimensionally rendered so that everybody saw it. So that's what they started their conference with. Then they went into Battlefield 5. I'm really not a big fan of the Battlefield series because I don't like walking out of a spawn and dying in 3 seconds due to a stray bullet. And that's kind of what that game turns into. There's so many people playing that game all at once that, it isn't the guy you see that's going to kill you. It's the guy you don't know is there that's going to kill you. And I just think it's really annoying to, walk out and then just drop dead. So I'm not a huge fan of that series. I understand that there is an appeal to that in that it's kind of realistic. But if they wanted to make a realistic portrayal of war, I would much rather they had hundreds of people and permadeath instead of a respawn. So maybe you walk out and you instantly drop dead and that's life and war sucks. Wait till the next match. That would really sell me on the whole immersion, and I could get behind that. But the whole, you died in a couple of seconds and then you went to a respawn timer and you had to wait. I'm not a patient person, and it doesn't feel like I'm being punished for being bad at the game. It's just this is part of the game. Sometimes you get shot by people you don't know are there. So I'm not super looking forward to it. But, for anybody who is, it's cool. It's coming out this year, I think, in the fall. And then they talked about FIFA. I don't care about FIFA. I don't care about any sports games. If I want to play a sport, I will go outside and play it. And the fact that I do not do so just tells you how little I care about sports. So they spent a good long chunk of time talking about FIFA. It was a frustratingly long segment. I know they do it because FIFA is where their real bread and butter lies. EA makes a ton of money on that game, and it's microtransactions. So they're gonna hype it up regardless of whether or not anybody cares, because as much as nobody seems to care, a lot of people care. So they're gonna talk about it. After that, they talked about their EA premium subscription service and their theory that in the future people won't buy games and will instead only stream them from this cloud. I think that's stupid. I think EA is stupid for thinking that. I'll tell you what, I own a mobile phone, and a lot of the games on mobile you can't play unless you have data. And so I just don't download any games on my phone. Most of them suck. And the ones that are good require me to have internet access, and I'm too cheap to pay for data, so I just don't play games on my phone. And a lot of places in the world don't have fast internet connections. And as much as you would like to say, but technology moves on, the internet will get faster. Yeah, good luck convincing Comcast and Time Warner to increase their bandwidth. They've kind of got like this oligopoly in the United States where they just don't compete with each other. And so there's not really any reason for them to make their internet any faster because they have no competition. Just why a lot of countries actually have faster internet than the United States now, because it's like pulling teeth to try to get them to increase our infrastructure here. So, like, I don't see it in 5 or 10 years that people are going to be like, internet's free, no problem. Like, even if you had fast internet, I don't want to pay a subscription service to EA to get access to only EA's games. If you want to do something like that, you need to be like Netflix, where you've got like a huge catalog of everyone's games, and be like, just pay this one subscription service and you have more games than you can freaking play in your lifetime. That would work. But as long as it's just one publisher, it'll never work. It's kind of like EA's Origin system, where they're like, we want DRM on our PC games, and we don't want to give Steam a cut, so we'll just make our own storefront like Steam's and just keep all the money. You know, that's great for your super hardcore dedicated fans that are willing to jump through the hoops to play your games. But for a lot of people, like myself, I just look at that and go, I don't want to install another program on my computer so that you can run more DRM on my computer so that I can play your games. So I just don't play any EA games because I just don't want to be bothered with Origin. If they would put their games on Steam, I would buy their games on Steam and they would still get some money from me, but their insistence that they want all the money or none of the money kind of makes it to where I just don't ever play any EA games, even the ones that look really good. They have been trying to convince me to install Origin on my computer for years, and so far they're unsuccessful. So I don't think they're going to be able to convince people who live in places that don't have a lot of bandwidth or have to pay per megabyte that the solution that they're looking for is to not even have the game on their computer and to have to stream everything. That sounds stupid. I think EA is kind of right. I think in the future, a subscription model where you can download the game anytime you want and play it offline or online, it doesn't matter, as long as your subscription is valid. I think that could really innovate the gaming industry. But you're going to have to get a bunch of developers to agree to put their catalogs together. No one developer could push such a thing except maybe Nintendo. And that's because Nintendo's already got people buying consoles just to play their games. So, like, obviously, the Nintendo catalog is crazy. If people are willing to shell out $300 every couple of years to buy the newest console to play the Nintendo games that they're going to have to pay $40 to $60 for, I think it's a fairly easy to sell to say, hey, for like $20 a month, you could just play all the Nintendo games. I think Nintendo could probably do it. But I don't think a freaking company like EA could do it. But they really want to, because they just want the money. Then afterwards, they talked about that. They did this really weird thing where the presentator went out into the crowd and talked to somebody, and they were all like, we don't have anything to show you about the new Star Wars game, but we did at least name it, so here's the name. And I just don't care. If you don't have anything to show, don't tell me you got a game. Like, you couldn't take one screenshot. There were no assets that were in a presentable state to show me. You don't have any concept art. Like, just don't talk to me about your game if you don't have anything to show for it. Then after that, they transitioned to Battlefront 2, which released to like a huge debacle last year. Everyone was really upset when that game came out because it had like the most egregious loot box system ever, where progression was locked behind loot boxes and you literally could pay to win. Or you could pay to not win if you're just not lucky on the RNG and you just spend tons of money for no reason. And that was a mess. So they came out and they basically admitted it, but they admitted it in like the world's biggest understatement kind of way.
We launched our game in November of last year, and clearly we didn't get it quite right. So instead, EA and DICE are committed to Battlefront. We had a rough start, but
they got some guy who was obviously really anxious to stand on the stage and be all like, yeah, we kind of messed it up a little bit. And it's like, you didn't mess it up a little bit. It was just really wrong. And then they talked about how they reworked the system, but they just kind of glossed over it. They didn't go into detail. And then they moved on to talking about upcoming DLC for Battlefront 2. I currently do not own Battlefront 2. I currently don't have any plans to buy Battlefront 2. And that is because I'm still not sure I forgive them for that whole loot box controversy. If they had really changed their ways and they were done with loot boxes, I might go, okay, I support you now. Way to back away from the cliff. But at no point during their conference did they ever say, we're done with loot boxes. They didn't announce they were moving loot boxes from their sports games. The loot boxes are probably still going to be in their sports games. And they revealed another game that I know for a fact does currently have loot boxes, and we'll get to that later. So I just don't care. They did announce that General Grievous is coming to the game, which is cool. General Grievous is awesome. But since I'm probably not going to play the game, it isn't going to affect me a whole lot. General Grievous was the reason why I didn't buy the game in the first place when it first was announced, like last year, before the controversy of the loot box thing was known. I said if it doesn't have General Grievous, I don't want to play it. I just want to play as General Grievous. So now that he's finally hitting the game, getting in the game, that's great. My one thing that they had to do has been checkmarked, and if they just hadn't screwed everything else up, I probably would have bought the game. After that, they talked about Unravel 2. It looks like a good game. Unravel looked like a good game, but it wasn't a good enough game to convince me to get in on the Origin system. I just could not be bothered. So I don't know if I'll pick up Unravel 2 either. I wish they were available on Steam. I would love to play those games, but I just don't care enough to install Origin. But it looks like a really good game. I might install Origin when Anthem comes out, if Anthem isn't a train wreck. And if that's the case, I might go back and play Unravel and Unravel 2. Unravel 2 apparently released today, which every time a company's all like, hey, welcome to E3, we got this cool game to show you, and now you can go out and buy it today. That's always cool. So huge props for that. But, if you were expecting a lot of games this year, too bad. The majority of the games at this conference are not for this year. I think Unravel 2 was the last of the games that were coming out this year, except for sports games. I think they announced 4 games that are due out this year. Battlefield 5, Unravel 2, and I'm assuming FIFA and Madden are getting a yearly release because that's just kind of what they do. So that would be like 4 games that are coming out this year. Everything else is for next year or like not even a date on it. So you really don't have anything else to look forward to from them unless you like sports games until Battlefield hits in the fall. So that's kind of disappointing. Then they talked about the success of A Way Out and their I forget the name of their program, where they basically just throw money at indie studios to fund projects, and how cool that was. And then some game developer who was entirely unready to be standing on a stage and was basically an emotional wreck from anxiety came out to talk about her game. And so she talked about Sea of Solitude for a bit and tried to talk about like what the meaning of the game was. But I really don't care about that until I actually see the game. And then they showed a trailer, and the trailer looks pretty good. The art design's interesting. The characters look interesting. The monsters look interesting. And it looks like a pretty trippy game that might be a lot of fun. So that might be something to look forward to. There wasn't a release date on that, though, so who knows when that'll be coming out. Then they talked about Madden for entirely too long, in my opinion, but whatever, it's one of their sports games, and their sports games make them so much money, it's stupid. And then it got really weird because they had two people come out to play a mobile game on stage, and they basically took like a 5-minute break from the conference so that these two people could play a mobile game. And they tried to not tell you what the game was while they were doing the gameplay of it, but like they really sucked at it. Like for one thing, they had the GDI logo in the background while they were loading up the game, and when they were talking about the person who was on the blue team, they had the GDI logo there. So anybody who's ever played Command & Conquer knew immediately, this is Command & Conquer. Like even before they loaded into the map, you knew it was Command & Conquer. Then they loaded the map, and the map's like covered in Tiberium crystals, and it's like, this is freaking Command & Conquer. And then like one of the announcers even said, like they referred to one of the units as a GDI unit, and it's like, why not just say it's Command & Conquer? If you can't keep it a surprise, just own up to it to begin with. There's enough Command & Conquer fans out there that would love a decent Command & Conquer game. So they had the gameplay. The gameplay looked good. The gameplay looked balanced. They went ahead and they said that you could go ahead and register for a pre-alpha, which that's kind of an alarming terminology. I don't think it's very common to get players to play pre-alpha builds. Usually you'd wait until at least the alpha build before you start getting players to play it. But apparently Android users could get in on the pre-alpha, which I did. I spent a couple hours playing it, which is why this video is so late coming out. Because I wanted more information. I'm a huge Command & Conquer fan. I've been playing Command & Conquer since I was in elementary school, and it came out on my N64. And I love the Command & Conquer music, and I just like Command & Conquer games. So it was like, hey, this looks surprisingly balanced and surprisingly fun for a mobile game. I'll give it a shot. So I joined the pre-register thing, and I've actually played it a bit, and I'm very disappointed. So this is, in its current form, in the pre-alpha, it's definitely pay to win. Because the game has two types of currencies. It has gold, and then it has gems. And gems are premium currency, and you can use them to buy loot boxes. And that's a red flag right away. That, hey, maybe this strategy game isn't so much strategy. Currently, in the pre-alpha, you can't spend money to buy the gems, but that's obviously how you're supposed to get gems. You're supposed to buy them. So, in the current build, it's not so bad, but when they go to release, they're definitely planning to open that up to money. And it's gonna hardcore pay to win, pay progression. The loot boxes contain different unit types, and they're in like card form. And you spend gold to train your units up to rank 3, and then you can spend cards, well, duplicate cards of a unit to rank up that unit to reset their training thing. And as you train and rank up your units, they get stronger stat-wise, but they don't increase in cost. So you straight up get better at the game by getting more of the cards. You could have units that are so much stronger than the beginning units that it doesn't matter. If you have epic units can just like freaking destroy the entire battlefield on their own. It's pretty crazy. So that game's definitely pay to win in its current model, which is really disappointing because that completely destroys the strategy of it. There isn't a whole lot of strategy there. Whoever has the better units and even close to the same skill level will just win. So that's very disappointing. I was hugely disappointed to see that because I really wanted a good Command & Conquer game. It has been way too long since we've had a good Command & Conquer game, but sadly it doesn't look like this mobile game is going to be it. The mobile game basically looks like it's going to be Battlefront 2 with frickin' progression loot boxes. And they will say that you can earn the loot boxes without the frickin' gems, but it takes way longer than put in your credit card number, so that's a bunch of crap. So that was sad. And then they spent a good long time talking about Anthem. They showed off a really long trailer that had no gameplay footage that made me think they weren't going to show any gameplay footage. And then they went into basically a Q&A where they answered some questions. The main question that was really the one that mattered is somebody asked how the game was monetized and if there would be loot boxes. And the answer that I got back was there would be no loot boxes in Anthem. So that's good. And it looks like EA, well, maybe didn't learn the lesson of people freaking hate loot boxes, stop putting loot boxes in games. At least learned the lesson of if you have a really big game that you're really counting on to sell, loot boxes aren't going to help sell it, so you shouldn't advertise them. But supposedly they guaranteed that there would be no loot boxes. The monetary system for the game is going to be cosmetic DLC, and it's non-random cosmetic DLC. You see what you're buying, and you choose whether or not you want to buy it, which is fine. I'm okay with that. Because at least that way it's not random. Like, you can make your own informed decision whether or not you think a monocle for your mech suit should be worth $80, whatever. If you want to pay an arm and a leg for some stupid cosmetic thing that nobody cares about, that's on you. You can make your own choices. So that was the correct answer. I'm not super excited about it, though, because, I don't trust EA a whole lot at this point, and it doesn't take a whole lot for somebody to be like, oh, we changed our mind, we decided to put them in last minute. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to hold off. The game has to launch without any loot boxes in it. When the game launches, I will know whether it has loot boxes in it, because reviews will come out basically immediately. And if it has loot boxes in it, I won't buy it. If they're good on their word and there aren't any loot boxes in it, it really looks like it's probably a pretty good game. It looks gorgeous. So I'll probably pick it up if they are actually being honest with me for once and there aren't any loot boxes. If there are no loot boxes, I'll probably buy it. And then if I buy it, I probably have to install Origin in order to do so, and then once I have Origin, I might as well just go back and get Unraveled and Unraveled 2. But I just don't have a whole lot of faith in EA. EA is one of those publishers that was like a hero of my childhood that made a ton of games that I love, and then over time has kind of been turned into a really greedy corporation that cares less about the games than it does the money, and hasn't really been releasing a whole ton of great games in recent years as far as I'm concerned. Their best games are always mired in a bunch of microtransaction crap or some other controversy that makes me just go, oh, why? So I'm going to wait and see on Anthem. It's looking good. And if they actually can deliver on their promise, and if they can actually deliver a large world to explore, unlike Destiny, which promised me the freaking moon, and then it turned out that the moon was a single level. That's not entirely accurate. The moon had more than one level on it, but it was small. I played Destiny when it first came out, and the entire game was probably less than 10 hours long if you're good. And it was super disappointing to be sold that tiny game and be like, that was a $60 experience, right? And be like, no, it wasn't. That was a huge disappointment. What happened to all that stuff you promised me? And they'd be like, you want to buy our expansion? It'll only cost you $30, and now you'll be able to use swords. It's no, get out of here. So, if they can actually deliver a good game that's sizable, unlike the original Destiny game. So, as far as I'm concerned, the world space looks pretty from what they've showed us, but they haven't showed us a whole lot. So, I'm kind of concerned that it might be a fairly small game that they're planning to expand over time, which is great. But I already got shafted on Sea of Thieves this year with a game that's got nothing in it for $60 that over time will become a good game. But I could spend that money on something else right now and then come back and buy it later once it's actually good. So yeah, I'll wait and see if the game's good. And if the game's got a lot going on for it and it doesn't have loot boxes, then I'll probably buy it. They really need to actually deliver this one, as opposed to promising me something and then never giving it to me. Because EA has really disappointed me. I'm really bitter about EA. And then that was it for their conference. They didn't really have anything else to show. So overall, the conference was pretty good if you looked at it from a just what all stuff they talked about and what all implications it could have. The fact that they had a Command and Conquer mobile game tells me they haven't forgotten that my favorite RTS series exists. The fact they made it into a mobile game instead of an actual PC game that, actually is a strategy game as opposed to a buy bigger numbers and then steamroll people game is kind of disappointing, but maybe they'll make a actual Command and Conquer game at some point, since they don't consider the IP dead. And since it's pre-alpha, maybe they'll fix this one and it won't be pay to win. But, no, I'll just have to wait and see. But if you looked at the conference from, an overall presentation-wise, it was kind of a really lackluster conference. Huge sections of it were talking about things I did not care about at all. I didn't care about sports games, really not into the Battlefield, really not into Battlefront. Basically, I was just there for Unravel 2, Sea of Solitude, being interested in the fact that there is a Command and Conquer game, and then later disappointed that it's pay to win, and then Anthem. That's it. And that's really not great. I spent an hour and 20 minutes watching the conference, and everything I wanted to know could have been summed up in probably 20 minutes. They didn't even need to show me Anthem, really. They just needed to say, oh yeah, Anthem, no loot boxes. That's all I wanted to know. Because everything else, is subject to change. Even that's really subject to change. I feel like I already have the gist of Anthem from E3 last year. They already showed it off. I don't really need another E3 of it. I just kind of needed a confirmation that they aren't going to try to screw me over with microtransactions, which they did give me. And if they do their job right and don't lie to me, is probably going to get them a sale. But you can't lie to me about that sort of thing. If you lie to me about that, I will never buy your game. Even if you remove the microtransactions later, because you lied to me the first time, there's no reason why you can't put the microtransactions back later. So hopefully they'll do the right thing and actually release it without any loot boxes. And that about covers it. That's what happened at the E3 conference for EA. The next conferences aren't until tomorrow, or, later today by the time this video goes up. And I will see you after those.